And I swear to God, you could hear it through the entire stable. It sounded like a trombone and a chainsaw mixed together. And you can imagine the smell. And that was my weekend. Okay, well, let me know when we're rolling.
We're rolling.
Hello, everyone. Before we get started, you never heard me say anything about horse farts. You will remember nothing. That's better. Okay, today's interview is another debut to Magic, and with a planeswalker, a mythic secret lair, and 2 rares under her belt, she is the definition of hitting the ground running. Her name is Kelley, her story is inspirational, and her interview begins now.
There we go. That would have been disastrous. Okay. So, pretending that I didn't just look like a total moron.
No.
So, thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
Yeah, totally. It's a pleasure.
Now, I'm not sure if, and we're going to just jump right to it. I'm not sure if this has happened before, but I think you might be one of the very few people that has gotten a planeswalker assignment on your first go.
Yes.
In Magic.
Yes. At the time, I didn't know the gravity of it because, I was getting assignments coming in, but I didn't, I wasn't able to read them as soon as they came in. So I was like, did they send this by mistake? I'm not sure. Should I respond? But no, I was really surprised by that. I didn't have it sort of clarified until after the cards came out from close friends that already worked there, like Andrew Marr, Siddharth. They both were like, what? So yeah, it's kind of crazy.
Do you think that would have, if you had known that while you were doing it, do you think that would have been would that have affected you? I'm sure you were, intimidated in a way that everybody, I imagine, would be in doing their first cards. But yes. Do you think that would have, how do you think that would have affected you, knowing or not knowing?
I think knowing it, it would be 2 things. One would be I would probably still overthink it, maybe even more so. But in another one, I probably would have been a little bit more thoughtful on certain things. Obviously, everything I go into, I'm going to do the best I can, be as diverse as I can when I submit my sketches and everything like that. But I definitely do think it wasn't that I didn't know anything about the character or the property. It was just completely new to me. Working with them, I think I would have been a little more familiar with their work process. So I had all of these things sort of in front of me, the training wheels weren't off yet when dealing with their art direction and their style guides and everything. So all of that was just a lot. But since I've done work before, you still have that professionalism. You have to dive in, you have to do what you have to do. So yeah.
And what's also astonishing is that looking through the 4 cards that you have gotten, you got 2 mythics and 2 rares, which is astonishing too, because those are, most of the time people are started out with a common, and I noticed you made a comment. Mike Linneman posted the art. I think it's called the art pair. I'm forgetting the name. He called it the art quality paradigm, and you mentioned that you were learning a lot about that.
Yes.
And do you think that what do you mean by learning a lot about that? Is that specifically in regards to you, or just in general that you're learning?
Just in general with audiences. You sort of know about it with other things, but if a card's bad, or if they don't like a book with a cover on it, so you're like, I don't know if I like this art as much. It goes both ways. Again, you could sell a book, you could sell a card with the art, as some people are like that, or it can be the inverse. I didn't enjoy this book, so maybe I don't like this art, and that happens. That's just part of it. Yeah,
it does. Yes, it's true, and it's a real shame because a lot of it's because there are more commons than uncommons, that some of the best artwork in the game is inevitably on them. But it's also it's truly astonishing that you got a chance to sort of right out of the gate, do the big time cards, and Yidris too, which is a commander from 2016, and you got to do him for the secret lair.
Yes.
And I want to talk about his design. What was the brief like when you got it? What did it say?
It looks like it was as minimal as it could be. You know, I knew that he was an ogre commander. I knew I had to make him, he had to be dapper for the environment. So of course I was like, oh, he has to be wearing clothing. I think the one thing they took to ground it was like, let's get the skull belt in there. Let's keep that in there. But other than that, everything is so garish. Everything is so colorful. And I was like, is this the right way to go with him? This is so unusual, but it's the environment. You have to be a little bit more lavish with this character. And he looks more suave instead of, you know, his previous art. It's complete departure.
Yeah, he's monstrous looking in there.
Oh gosh. So I'm like, oh, they're gonna be like, what? I'm not sure. But hey, the art director, Sarah Wassel, I just had such a good time working with her. But yeah, she was like, he looks very dapper here.
Well, it's interesting too, because if you look at it, well, I mean, actually, one of the questions I want to ask is there an inspiration from Beauty and the Beast hiding in there?
No, surprisingly, I think that blue is just, it punches you in the face.
Because
maybe
when the Beast is in that ballroom scene when he's dancing with Belle and he's got the blue tuxedo on, I think it's blue. At least I remember him wearing a suit that was similar. And and in the original incarnation, the sketches you did, he even had more of a horned look.
Yes. So I had the references in front of me, but for some reason, when I started working on it, I thought that I could do more stylization there. That's me getting a little bit off script a little bit. So I realized halfway through, I was like, wait, I can't go that stylized and creative with it. He has horns. That's a staple of his physique and silhouette. So that was a change. Halfway through, I went back to the line art and I was like, I have to mark this in. So when I get to the final stages, I can revise that. The steps before those horns look completely different. It was amazing how much that changed because of that one slight derailment. I still have that one. And I'm like, actually, I still think this is cool, but not for that character.
Gotcha.
So when you get to that kind of mistake, because I think he was the only one that I did that with, where the change was so drastic on something so integral to the character. I was like, oh shit. So it was kind of
that's so funny because it's for me, Yidris is almost like I would be hard pressed to even sort of give because the original is so chaotic.
Yes.
And so like it's almost like you can't tell what's coming at you, which I think is very much the point of the way Cascade works and the way the character works. But it's cool to see that you were on that side of things, that you were being like that you're already so thoughtful about it, and obviously you would be. But it's just it's cool to see, especially in a debut artist for the game. When you design with Elspeth, how much of the design of her clothing came from? I mean, obviously there's some art direction, but I'd imagine there's a lot of you in there. There's a lot of your previous work. You dabble in the designs of the costumes, correct?
Yeah, it's one of the things that I believe clothing can be part of a personality, because you can do the way it drapes can be sort of lethargic looking, or if they have a lot of movement, that can absolutely just change a mood of a character. Yeah, even if you don't even realize it, you're like, that character looks very carefree, even though they could be a total asshole, you know? So you have to be sort of more thoughtful with clothing. As far as her style goes, the style guide that they sent me, I am actually unsure of who the concept artist was on the style guide. It might have been, I'm so sorry if I have this wrong, it might have been Tyler Jacobson.
I mean, he's definitely one of them. Although I'm under the impression that sometimes they do, like it's a group process, but you know more about it than I do because I'm not in the
behind the scenes. As far as how they do their work, I'm actually not sure. But her design is just so it feels so complete. I didn't really do much. I didn't really deviate from much. It's a beautiful concept. So I didn't really change much. But one thing I did earlier on was the armor was darker. so I had a deeper kind of silver to it, and I loved when it was darker. So I have like this really loose, sketchy version where her armor was obviously super contrast with the gold. And I was like, I actually love this, but that's not following that style. So I had to lighten it up and change it. So
one of the things I noticed about you is that you have, of at least going through your Instagram, you have the like a penchant for putting unfinished or what you consider unfinished pieces up, regardless of whether like you're happy with them or and I find that very interesting because from most my experience, most artists are very reticent. Why do you think that why do you feel comfortable putting things up that sometimes you personally will say you're not even terribly fond of?
Yeah, because I used to be like that. I used to keep things close. And it's not fair because a huge part of you is waking up really sleepy and you haven't had your coffee yet, and you're just sort of spitting out like you're not coherent yet. So those sketches feel like that to me. You're working through things and sort of just clearing out the cobwebs before you start, and that is so much fun. I like seeing it when other artists do that. And so even the stuff I'm embarrassed about, it's almost like you guys need to see this because there's a lot of ugly stuff before there's one thing that's halfway decent. And that's the honest truth. My sketchbook isn't pristine. Let's not get it, no, that's not me. I do a lot of terrible jokes in the margins and just things like that. I think everyone should do it, but I understand when someone doesn't want to.
Yeah, it's sort of a double-edged sword because while I personally feel like I would personally like to put the warts and all out, I don't think that somebody's being necessarily fake or being or putting up a posture. It's just sort of like, I guess it is sort of very personal choice. But one thing I wanted to comment on is I was going through your Instagram and this was a post you put for Inktober, and I was shocked at how harsh you were. And I'm not sure if this was maybe a joke or if you were teasing, but you went into yourself very, very harsh. And I mean, and I'm wondering, has that, now that you've been doing, you did work with Oathbreaker, you're certainly, making your way into the art scene as a whole, but do you think that now you have a better outlook on yourself? And when you look back at stuff like that, is that something that you can, sort of say, I've moved on from that?
Yeah, I think it goes beyond art. I think it's a combination of things that have shaped you in the entirety of your life. So there are times where I'm just like, you're so used to having the criticism around you that it shapes you. You feel like you're not improving unless you're hard on yourself, and that is something you can't do. It's something I battle with a whole lot previously, and it's something that can creep in every now and then because you feel like, oh, you have to be better, you have to do this, and it's not just praise. You don't want just flattering words. It has to be harsh in order to be legit, and that is a real thing you have to battle with, and it's serious because a lot of artists might deal with the same thing, and it's almost like we're getting a little heavy here, but it's almost like a self-harm in a way. So I think it's something you have to be aware of. It's good if you practice ways to become aware of your flaws and battling them without being so destructive. And it's good to have a good support system, but not everyone's able to do that. Not everyone's able to have so many support systems. So just be aware of your thought process. And my partner calls it spiraling. Like don't hop on the Ferris wheel of just negativity. So when you realize you're doing that, it slows down improvement rather than helps it. So.
It absolutely, and I think that especially when you are somebody, like especially people in the arts, I'm not saying that people who are not in the arts are not prone to being sensitive, but there is a general overly sensitive aspect of being artistic. You feel things very heavily, and that plays into it. And I think that you're right when you say that, and I do think it is very much self-harm. I've interviewed a ton of artists where I mean, we're talking artists who are like, you know, considered icons and legends at this point in their careers, and they still are downing themselves. And it blows my mind that they can even think that. So when you say support system, I know that the Magic community is incredibly supportive of one another, but did you get it from other artists? I mean, obviously a partner, but was there other artists that were able to sort of help you walk through and get to a better place?
Yes, there were artists. There are even artists in another way that's completely a different industry. So one of my closest friends, she understands that sort of spiraling, that sort of, it's almost like you're putting on an armor, and it's part of a little bit of insecurity. So if you criticize yourself, someone else's criticism won't hurt as much.
Right.
So I have a couple of friends that can see through that. They know. And so, you know, they'll sort of, you're reaching your hand towards the stove and you're going to that place, and they sort of slap your hand away and they're like, no, you're doing it again. So I have a couple of, let's see, her name is Jolling Pan. She's the one that has sort of been the stabilizer, and she's in the industry as a game designer, a director. So she's the one I would credit the most with being that support system. Let's see, Siddharth has been really supportive. He's the one that has sent me so much information. He got me in touch with Mike. He's the one that actually said, hey, let's see if she can do some magic work. And it's him, it's all, but see, I've known him for a long time. We were, you know, we hung out together when we were both in California. All of us were Andrew Marr. We were working at mobile studios. So this is before we even started working with magic. But I credit him for actually sort of giving me that push. So I would ask him questions about, hey, what should I do here? Or is this typical, with dealing with art directors and everything? So when I did feel very, my confidence was just not there. I was like, hey, I can't believe they want me to do this. And then you can sort of feel the creeping in of that same, your brain wants to pull you under and take you to that place where you can't do this. You don't deserve this. You know, they're just doing this for a certain reason. But those people are like, hey, you're one of the best people I know. You're good. Just snap out of that and just do what you like to do, you know.
Exactly. Yeah. Because it's so true. I think the reality of the situation is that these art directors are not going to, they're not going to play a game of niceties if you're giving them work that they're not happy with. Yes. And that's the thing that I think is key to remember is that, I mean, and I love saying this, I love asking this because it's just so cool, but like now that you are in the game officially, all of these people are now your contemporaries. Is that, I mean, how's that feel?
It feels great because I know that when they jumped in far before me several years. So seeing them, you know, be involved and, you know, get assignments and thrive. I'm so happy. I'm just happy for them. I love their art. So they're my inspirations. So you have to think like, why can't I think that for myself? There's probably, you know, people reach out to you and they say, I love your work. I love this. And becoming, you know, saying, hey, I'm a part of this. It's still something I have to digest on a regular basis. Because, you know, you're in your own skin. You wake up every day and this is you. But to other people, it might be, wow, they came from this, or they, you know, just a couple years ago, it was like, I didn't know anything about you, but now you're this. So getting used to that is an ongoing thing, I guess.
Yeah, it's very cool. It's very cool. Now, your website, you call it the gentle and the grotesque. What's the inspiration behind that title? I think that your work does have those elements of it, but is that where did that come from? That particular line?
Monster, sort of like a mix of monster and romance. So when I was younger, I you know, watched movies that were a little bit, you know, earlier than I should have watched them, and I had
like what?
like the fly, you know, so I love those moods. I didn't really comprehend them until much later.
Oh yeah.
But that had a huge impact on how I perceived gross things. So my art took a really big shift at the end of last year. So I decided to sort of embrace that and maybe do a lot of things that may have just a touch of something weird. I used to do a lot of creatures when I first started doing art, and I have to say that was probably the most honest I've been. They're sort of lost through time. And I realized, I was like, that was fun. I want to try to do that again. And it's mostly some graceful, quiet version of some creature. And that's a work in progress now. So when I put that portfolio and started rebuilding it, it was like, this is going to remind me that, you know, this is what I like to do. Maybe as I fill that portfolio out, make new things and, you know, grow. That's a reminder to myself. That's what I like. That's an identity for me. Yeah.
And you had even mentioned that for a while you had stopped doing art entirely due to, you know, personal reasons, which I'd imagine were sort of related to what, you know, you alluded to before.
Yeah.
What was the moment when you like decided, I'm going to do art again. I'm going to get back into this. And what was the catalyst behind that?
The catalyst was sort of feeling like it's a part of your identity. It feels like you can't communicate in a way that you need to. There's, even if it's just communicating to yourself, you know, you talk yourself up, you get yourself amped, you have this idea, and it's this visceral thing that sits in your gut that you need to exercise. And so I wasn't actively doing that. So it would just snowball until it was actually a burden. So I would sketch on my own. And when you're out of the game that long, you don't do art, you don't do anything. You actually don't know what you want to do anymore. Because I was still looking at art every day, and books that would give me images that I'd want to put down, but I didn't have the confidence to do it. You just sink into that place and you're there and you're seeking other avenues. Like it even got bad enough to where I was like, I don't even think I'm an artist. I'm just sort of playing around with this. It is definitely a part of your mental health. You will completely sabotage yourself if you don't take care of yourself.
It's weird, right? That as human beings, we do that. I mean, what is the evolutionary purpose behind that? I mean, it seems to, it affects so many of us.
Yeah.
And yet I always wonder, I'm like, what is the point of that? Like,
I don't know. It's terrible.
It is. It's very tough. But, I have to commend you for stepping, out of it and getting, back to what you like love. And then I read from your Elspeth, on the Elspeth drawing, you talked about the getting the assignments and what it does for as far as motivation. Like, I'd imagine it gives you more, right?
Yes, it gives you more for sure.
And there is such an obvious joy in your, like, you the way that you're writing when you were working on the magic stuff. Like you're bubbling, and especially one you call it Offum, but I believe that its official title is Void Rend.
Right.
You said that one was just a joy to work on. I'm wondering what made that one like so much fun to work on.
This one actually came before the Elspeth one. I think so, yes. So for some reason, this one, I had the idea in mind immediately. So whenever that happens, I know it's going to be something that manifests and is something that's not just, I'm not doing an assignment, I'm not doing anything that I know where I'm strict about it. I just knew I wanted to have fun. I had a lot of inspirations from people that do paper art. So they sort of do this diorama with layers of paper, and then there was relief work. And so those two things stood out to me, and I had that effect in my head before I had the drawing down on paper. So for some reason, just going with that and knowing exactly what I wanted, it was just, it allowed me to sort of meander outside instead of running on a track. I was just able to, you know, run on a trail or something and take in everything while I worked on it. And I don't know, it just, there were things within it that were complicated. You know, it's a spell, so you have to make sure that magic is there.
Mhm.
And you need to show that effect. The character originally was going to be slowly like an effect near the body being distorted and sort of shredded and ripped apart, but then it sort of took away the effect of it being a little bit more flat. Like it needed to have those sharp shadows to sort of throw off everything. And so that's why I needed to up the contrast and the glow on the effect that's around that character. So that challenge was so much fun to me, trying to work that problem out while still keeping the original idea intact. It was just, it was so fun to work on it.
It's very interesting. It's a very gorgeous like depiction of violence, if that makes any sense. I mean, but it's magical violence, but it's very pretty, and that's difficult to do. Now, I'd imagine, I mean, I wonder, is that when you say like things being a little like undercurrent of weird, do you think that it would fall into that category of like making something like that is traditionally violent beautiful? Or
yeah, it can be, I definitely think violence can be beautiful, but
right, yeah, it can be.
Yeah, but you can't romanticize it in a way to where it's actually where you get to an uncomfortable spot. You don't want to glorify or celebrate it, but you also have to acknowledge that it's human nature. And I know it's a game and there's magic and everything, but it's expressive still.
Right.
And you have to utilize that. You can have a character where, you know, this character is definitely violent. He's sitting at a table and having a drink, but this guy is huge. He doesn't get huge by sitting down and doing nothing. So obviously that guy, you know, has done some things with his fists, or, you know, that guy has a sword. It's not, you know, I know some are ornamental on different types of characters, but it's, you have to sort of express it in more than just, you know, sword to torso. There's other ways.
It's also, yeah, it makes me think about like the people who condemn horror films, like, and they say that all horror is like pornographic, or, you know, as though, and yeah, they just don't understand that they're incorrect in what they're not seeing, that just because something has violence in it, you're right, it doesn't mean it's romanticizing it or glorifying it. It's just, there is something about fear and anger that is like, it has to be discussed. Otherwise it comes out in the really bad ways, right?
I think they're getting, with the horror aspect, I think they're getting a little bit cross, because there's a lot of sexuality in old, you know, horror movies, pulpy stuff.
Yep.
So that's got a little tie-in. But you know, and that, I guess that's understandable, but there's more ways than that to communicate. You know, it's understandable, but it's a shame because you're sort of cutting off so many avenues of understanding different ways of communicating, especially concepts like violence, or you know, anything that's darker, instead of just, it's Conan, you know, like, what do you think Conan does?
Yeah, right.
You know, there's beautiful ladies there, but of course, but yeah, it's more than that, I think.
Yeah, it is a shame. I mean, I noticed that there finally was a shift with when Jordan Peele did Get Out and it won the Oscar. Everybody all of a sudden who was like shitting on horror or anything dark was just right up, like right on it, and you know, all of a sudden they love everything, and now horror is kind of having this renaissance. When you think about doing personal pieces, are you going to do things that are you going to step into that realm of weird? And what would be what kind of things have you wanted to do that you've not gotten a chance to do that you would feel comfortable discussing here?
Oh yeah, so I have a personal project that you have such a thing that is so big in your head, allowing yourself, like I said earlier, you can snowball things where it becomes a burden. So I have this idea, it is a romance horror idea, and it involves these people that are able to modify themselves with threads. They're able to take organic material and change their flesh, because in a textile way, though, they're not actually using, it's just a visual grotesque change of their appearance. So there's several of these people, and it's in that vein of just, oh, there's someone that works as a concierge in a hotel, that at night this guy is stalking around and he looks dapper and he's hosting ceremonies and he's the master of show, but at the same time this guy is like really just terrible behind the scenes, at night, stalking around and harming people. The folk, and it's so scattered. The ideas haven't coalesced into anything, because you have the ideas, you're writing things down, you're doing little sketches, but you haven't done anything tangible yet. So I'm hoping to get that sort of into some solid shape soon. That's really my main thing outside of professional work. So yeah.
It sounds like a cool idea. And I mean, do they have a name yet? Does this type of creature have a name that you've given them?
Yeah, they're called tailors.
Okay, so
yeah.
So then is that what that you master of tailors? Is that the?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's because it involves style and textile a whole lot, but you have to mix that in with horror somehow. And so I've done a lot of these ideas where this person, he doesn't really have a specific color or shape, because he's always different in some way. And so these people are masters at that. I even had, in the very beginning, I had an idea of, a pipe organ. And it's sort of like a theater. It's so theater, where this person has a pipe organ that looks like, I don't know if you or maybe your audience has ever seen like huge embroidery machines that are in factories.
Oh yeah, I've not seen them personally, but I've seen photographs of them.
Oh, they're horrifying. I've worked with them personally, and
really,
yes, I used to do a little embroidery work. And then started digitizing art to be, done on embroidery machines. And so working on those machines, you get to see the mechanics, and they're scary. I mean, you can lose a hand working on those things.
Yeah.
So it's terrifying, and they're loud and they're aggressive. And so I thought of a pipe organ and how the threads run through that pathways. And I was like, this looks like it could be combined. And so I had sort of like this Phantom of the Opera thing, where it's super dramatic romance. Like this guy, he has someone in this structure underneath an old hotel, and he's making these ball gowns, and they're affixed to their skin, and they can modify it and grow different textures out of them and look beautiful, but it's really gross. So that idea was there. That idea has always been there somehow. Yeah.
That's really, I mean, it's almost like it really has sort of like a Neil Gaiman kind of like feel to it. It got that epic, like, I mean, he's great in a sense that, I mean, don't get me wrong, like I love like the horror like Stephen King, but I love that the way Gaiman can sort of create these characters that are just truly horrific in a world that's sort of dreamy. And it seems like that's where that's going, at least from what you said to me. It's a really cool idea. I mean, hopefully maybe discussing it here, when you discuss it out loud, you're sort of making it like obligating yourself, so to speak, to do it.
I'm committed. I have to now.
Yeah, right. It's on the record, and if you don't do it, I will be just so pissed. And nobody wants that. I mean, obviously.
No. I'm terrified.
You should be. I'm a terrifying person. I mean, really, there's literally tons of nobody has said that. But okay. So one of the things that I did want to ask about is you are now a principal artist at Stray Kite. What does that mean? What does the principal artist do there?
So you do art. You're not exactly an art director. I will be doing primary concepts for their projects. Obviously, I can't say anything.
You got NDAs.
I have that. And so I'll also be working with other artists sending off assignments. So these can be third-party studios, concept art houses. So I'll be sending off assignments to various artists, and getting, handling the scheduling and doing the critiques, anything that is not, I'm unable to do time-wise. I'd be able to delegate that. And so I'm starting on the 2nd of next month. So I know what I'm getting into, but it's really exciting. I haven't worked in-house anywhere over 8 years. And I'm always into games. I'm always into developing them in any sort of way. So being able to do magic, that's awesome. Any way I can be involved in some sort of gaming entertainment. So I was like, I can do magic work. I can still do that, but I can also do this as well.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
Yeah, I just want it all. I want to be a part of everything without, obliterating myself and burning out.
Well, I mean, yeah, and you can definitely, I think striking while the iron's hot it's always a good thing to do, because it's funny how that happens. Like when the doors open, they really do. And sort of like you can, if you're crafty about it, and you can really like set yourself on a path that sort of maintains itself. I guess the force of like what is it? What's the word I'm looking for? Oh, I'm blanking on it. It's like momentum. There we go. But so that's just great. So if I know I'm gonna kind of go on a little bit of a like switch here, but I want to know who some of your biggest inspirations are as far as music goes, because you do a lot of music inspired pieces. So I'm curious to see what you listen to, and how does that shape the type of artist you become?
Let's see. So back in the 90s, I sort of did a little bit of a pivot, because growing up in the environment I did, there was a lot of hip hop and R&B. But by the time I got to the 90s, I was breaking off to more recognizable things like, Bjork, or going back to the early 90s where there was more grunge. So, but that sort of springboarded off into other musicians that were a little bit more unique. So still recognizable, like Mike Patton and Primus. And I was getting into sort of going, I was going sideways from what I grew up with.
Right, yeah.
So I ventured into a lot of progressive metal, which reminded me, there's cues from jazz in that heavily.
Oh, yeah.
So anything that was related to that you can hear, because originally I was going into music. I was going to be a music theory major.
Really?
Yes. So there was, sometimes things just happen where it throws you off and you go a completely different direction. So I ended up being immersed in progressive metal for a very long time, and then bouncing back to jazz. So I was listening to bands like Leprous and like Hacken and stuff like that. And I was like, I can hear these melodies from just straight up jazz, these riffs that they're using. So I still go back to jazz a whole lot. There's now there's more, I'll branch off into pop now, a lot of orchestral stuff. I'll go back to classical music in particular, because, it's sort of like looking at a master painting,
Exactly, yeah. And I think they say that Pachelbel's canon is considered like to be the grandfather of all pop music. A lot of pop comes from basically sort of reworking the song. And it's kind of crazy when you think about like musical bloodlines and how you can discover like the way you discover jazz or discovered here, you hear the jazz and the metal. It takes a very a very attuned ear to hear that. But I'm fascinated by like musical like lineage and how it just we truly have to build off of one another. And it's also, it fascinates me the way sampling has turned into a genuine like work of, it's a work of art. I mean, like, I didn't even realize that, for instance, like the song Rhythm is a Dancer from the 1990s is actually based off of a sample from an 80s song that when you hear it, it's completely unlike it. So I love that idea of musical lineages. So like, what would be like, if you could give like somebody who you're listening to right now that you would say, just have a listen to, who would that be?
Oh, goodness. Let's see.
And they don't have to be new or anything. It could just be anybody who's sort of just like on your radar. I personally go through, you know, like phases of artists where it's like I have to have a lot of them.
Oh my goodness, I have their name in my head right now, but there's like a catalog that I'm combing through with my fingers, like vinyl records, and I can't remember the name. So I'll take someone I just mentioned. All right, I mentioned Leprous. So their newer albums, they have that more falsetto singing, and I really love it. So a band starts out this way, and you have vocals that aren't clean, and you're cool with that, you like it. But then all of a sudden they're being a little bit more melodic and they're changing. And I think I would take what they're doing now and sort of actually take the vocals out. You know, a lot of musicians, they'll put out their special editions and then have a instrumentals only.
I that's the only time that I will like download it legally, because it's the only time you can sometimes find.
Right.
And it's like, why can't they just do that for every, I mean, I know it costs money, but it's like, for like someone like for like Bjork or Tori Amos, Radiohead, yes. I would love to have every single one of their pieces of work instrumental. Not because I hate the voice or anything like that. It's just, I like to see how the work is like, it's constructed.
And it's kind of hard because, you know, when you hear a band live versus in a studio, it could be the same for art. Take some art. You're drawing live for an art audience. You don't have that opportunity to sort of refine and undo things, and you have a lot of time to be a little bit more picky. So in a studio, you know, they do a lot of things to, you know, master their music. It sounds cleaner. It sounds crisper.
Right.
It's organized. So when I do hear a melody or instrumental, it feels like I can fill in the blanks. I can add, you know, whatever I want on top of that. So I don't know. My partner actually, he listens. He's a guru with the sampling thing. He can hear a measure. He can hear a bar of something and say, "Oh, this is from this soul singer or funk singer in the '70s," and it's because he listened to one hip hop album. So he'll have 5 or 6 records just sitting around, and we'll listen to them, and one song will pop up, and just there's just a run of notes, and he's like, okay, it's from this song, and he'll pull up the song on his phone, and he's like, there it is right there, and it's been pitched up or something. So being able to hear that, and I'm like, you're like you're like the Wikipedia of samples, you know.
Right.
It blows me away, and I feel like that. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna say, I bet he loves that website whosampled.com. Like,
oh yeah,
love that site. I get wormhole on it for days.
And that's his thing. It's sort of like art, where you see artists that you like, and there's certain aspects to them where you like, I can't remember his name. This is terrible when your brain is just like, Keith Parkinson is one of my favorite artists. He was the first artist I saw on a CJ Sherry book cover. And I was like, this is it. This is what I like. I like the book, but I like looking at this art. Like, yeah, I'm doing this in some sort of way, whether it's just me and goofing off in class or whatever. And so I see a couple of artists that sort of throw me back, and I was like, this guy reminds me of when I, you know, was just fawning over these book covers. I had so many artists in the 90s that were just, they just fed on that. Just right now, colors wise, I'm like, I remember liking those Larry Elmore book covers, and everything was blue and red, and just the way he drew faces and everything like that. So when I see new artists, it's almost like it throws you back. You don't want to just compare things all the time, but I mean, inspirations are a thing, you know, people sampling ththings. That's music. It's a thing.
Yeah, you can't. I mean, there's absolutely no way to avoid it. I mean, I always find it annoying when critics are like, making homages is not. I'm like, it's not a problem if it's done in a way that is just that honors the work and isn't trying to steal from it.
Yeah.
Then I don't understand why you have a problem with it.
Yeah.
And to me, it's like we retell each other's stories. We read work each other's ideas. There's only a set amount of notes that we can play, right? So you have to rewrite something, you know, like it's going to happen. I mean, that's just the lay of the land. But it's really cool to see it coming into you know, a light that I think people are starting to get, that it's respectable. The violin piece that you did on your website, and I won't keep you for much longer, but the violin piece, you mentioned that you said that you could not make it into a full illustration, and it looks like a full illustration to me. What was the reason that you feel like you couldn't do that?
What I mentioned earlier, sometimes it looks like it needs to be done in a certain style that feels like I can't get that on paper in a way, in that dimension.
I see.
So it's you're almost hobbling yourself earlier on, because just like you said, people give themselves these arbitrary rules for some reason. And it could be damaging. So for that one in particular, that's just what I felt like. I was like, I have this restriction and this is how it was gonna, you know, come out. Now that I've kind of grown a little bit and changed, obviously I would never say never to sort of translating that to another way, to another, you know, style or something. It's just, at the time, that was just what I felt. It was just some rule, and it didn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to me now.
Yeah, right.
But back then it was like, this is how it has to be, or something, you know.
And I understand completely. It's mind-boggling how the mind does like to play tricks on itself. It does like to fool itself, and it sucks out loud when you're like, oh my God, I fell for that. I was listening to that voice that was telling me that I'm crap, and I wasn't actually crap. Like,
no.
Quite good.
No. I wish I could just hug half the people. It's like that I see, and they're you know, they're down on themselves, and it's because you know that, you know, you've done that, you know what it feels like. And I'm just like, I just want to, I think I mentioned this once on Twitter, and I was like, I want anyone who grew up trying to do art in like a toxic household or around something that was affected them. I just want to take all of them and put them in a log cabin, and we can all just draw, and we won't have noises and we won't have anything, and we can just, you know, do that. It's sort of like art therapy, you know. It's just one of those thoughts that I have, because you get in a way, it's like, I know someone is feeling this way. You know, I get emails sometimes, and I'm like, I wish I could just help. You know, I wish I could turn it off for someone like someone did for me.
I mean, it's wonderful to hear you speaking out for it. I think that's where your actual, like, the power that you have can be utilized. I mean, if you can take your success and use it as a platform to talk about these issues that can surround being an artist, or, I mean, fuck it, being a human is
right.
That's where, I mean, that's that's the cherry on top of the ice cream, right?
And I feel like a lot of the times, because you feel a certain way about yourself, you feel like artists just like you that are going through the same things as you feel like they're unattainable, you know, so you can't reach out to them, or you can't do this. And I feel like I want that to be the feeling that I get, you know, give off to other artists. I don't want anyone to feel like you don't go through anything, or you're not still going through things. The artists I put out work, let's see, The Secret Layer, Julie Dillon, she got her first card alongside me.
Mhm.
And she made a post saying, sometimes I feel like I'm not confident. I hope she doesn't mind me saying that on here, but it's on her Twitter. And she has no idea that she is the person that made me want to start doing digital art. Like,
That's amazing.
her in particular, like she is the one. So I was like, wow, she feels this way, you know. And it's one of those moments where you're like, they're just like us, celebrities, you know.
And it's, I mean, I've said before, I'll say it again. I mean, with John Avon, I literally had him say to me, I don't understand why people like my work so much. And I'm like, it's, I'm so, and but it's like, you can't, it's so, I really do think that nowadays because people are taking mental health more, you know, with more of a serious like implication, and there isn't such a stigma against getting help when you need it, that we're realizing that kind of thinking, that whole suffering artist thing is kind of, I mean, it may be bullshit. I mean, like, yes, great art comes from pain, but great art also comes from not being in pain. Great art happens when a great artist does great art, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like, I always disliked people who only liked an artist when they were suffering, and then when they saw them get successful, and all of a sudden they wouldn't have anything to do with them. And I'm like, that to me doesn't seem like it's the artist's problem so much as it is yours.
No. Yeah, like there's Devin Townsend. He makes, you know, he's very open about, hey, I was doing drugs, you know, I was in this band, and but now I'm clean and I'm awakening. And it's like, I like your older stuff. Their older stuff was better, you know, and things like that. And this artist basically says, you know, you have to change, you know.
Right.
Let's do something else. I'm not boxed in. You know, why should I be boxed in?
Yeah, it's like, it's always weird when I think people do that. I'm like, well, if you like truly do not like someone's work, what makes you think that it's okay? I don't know, just to go up to them and be like, I don't like what you do now. It's like, what the fuck am I supposed to say to that? I mean, like,
it's thinking that it's like the parasocial relationship thing. It's like you're still not in a personal relationship. Music is personal to you. Art is personal to you.
Yes.
So you sort of you get lost in the sauce and thinking, hey, I know this person intimately because their art is so important to me, and that's not the case. So I think people get too comfortable.
That's a very good point. That breaks it down, like the psychology behind it. I mean, wow, music theory though. That one just came out of left field. I mean, that is such a focused and very like, I mean, you don't hear a lot of people saying that they were even considering to do that. I mean, like, what was your instrument? What did you play? What do you play?
So I no longer play anything. I mean, I could pick up instruments, but I played the clarinet. I played the cello. So if I could have all the time in the world, I think I would pick up a couple of things. Like I would like to pick up the bass. I actually have a little Squire sitting in the corner, and it's like, I need to do this just to get the art out of my head.
I was wondering about that.
Yeah. So sometimes I will look at compositions and listen to something at the same time, just to sort of do the visual and, you know, just listening to it, and just, you keep understanding things just as a hobby. It's something that's in you. So it's been so long since that transition happened. You feel it, you still feel that in you as a part that needs to be exercised.
But it doesn't go away.
It doesn't go away ever. So I'll probably delve into something, whether it's completely out of left field. I was like, you know what, I would like to make some tracks for a game or something. Like, maybe I can.
That would be cool.
I would love to do something like that. I'm not the best piano player, but I think that is a foundation to where you can, you know, I have the ability.
I mean, in the cello the cello is like, I don't know, have you ever heard of a band called Rasputina? They were
yeah
so cool, like the way that they use cello to I mean, it can really paint that scene the way it can be a lead instrument the way the piano is or guitar. is it's so cool. But I mean, you must be just then very musical to begin with. I mean, like you strike me as maybe one of those people who can pick up an instrument and just sort of like be all right with it at least from the get-go.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely don't want to make light of it because there are physical aspects to playing instruments that are, muscle memory and demanding. And like, I wouldn't be able to pick up a brass instrument because I just don't have that language of your armature and things you need to play. But after that adjustment period, I would be excited. It's just hard because you have to be really bad and you have to be okay at being really bad, possibly for a lot longer than you think you might be bad at it. So I think that's a part of getting, get good or something like that. You just have to be okay with just being terrible. And maybe that will help you learn actually faster.
It really truly does. I believe so. It's like, and it's such a hard thing, especially with young people. It's hard to tell them like, listen, like it's okay to suck like for a little bit. Like you can suck for a little bit and it's normal. Not everybody comes out of the womb, a genius, and it's tricky, but that's fascinating. That's fantastic. Well, I've got one more question before I let you go, and that is there anything that you are working on that you can talk about that you would like to promote? And if you wanted to do any sort of general plugs, feel free to do that.
Let's see. Do you mean for Magic or just in general?
I mean for everything that you are working on that is viable to you.
Oh, yeah. So I have some new characters coming out, just some single characters. I'm starting to put backgrounds on them because an artist that works for Marvel, I can't remember his name. He said we need to know where they are. So, I like this character. I did a character that looks like she's in a desert. But if I didn't include that, it'd be like, well, it's cool and all, but I want to see what she can do. Is there a sandstorm? Is there something? So I'm doing a lot of characters. I would like to put out a book. I would like to just self-publish something with a bunch of characters, and maybe I should, use my personal project to do that. I'm still currently doing work for Magic. I have another set coming out later.
Excellent.
And a video was my art director. And then I'm working
He's great, isn't he?
He's so amazing. So I was really psyched to work with him, and the assignments I got with him are just great. I'm excited about those. And then I have another couple of things coming out that I'm working on now.
That are NDA'd, I take it.
Yeah, NDA'd.
Which, I mean, it's a double-edged sword, right? It's like, it's a great thing to have happen, but it also is like, damn it, it's like, I want to talk about it.
Yeah, it took me a year to get that art out, and you have that weight. And then as soon as that art came out, it was like, hey, you want to do this? You want to work on this? So I'm excited about working for Stray Kite. They're a younger studio, so I'm really hoping that being on the ground floor with these guys, we can put out something soon. They're all just professionals with so much experience. They put out games that I played and lost hours to, and health too, and
right.
So I'm really excited about those guys. And but yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm sketching and drawing every day. I'm not able to do as much at the moment because I have so much going on. So there's definitely going to be some new character concept art soon. I have to chip away at them a little bit at a time. So yeah, that's all I have going on at the moment.
That's all you have going on. I mean, that seems like, I mean, is that really that much? I mean, I don't know.
And learning social media, having to do this at the same time is new because I'm not the best at social media, but you have to be now.
Oh, so, right. It's murder. It's murder. It's like everybody has to be their own publicist and photographer and makeup artist and all. Yeah. I mean, it's, I wish it didn't exist. I mean, I get it. It's a great tool, but it is such a pain in the ass to have to you're like, okay, I got to add this to this and that and this, and got to have a link tree and, plug myself. I mean, yeah, it's necessary evil.
And that's not even the finance part and all that other stuff.
Oh, I know, right? It's.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a shit show. But
It really is. It's like a shit tornado.
yeah, it is. But I mean, I guess it's a good shit tornado to be in, because it's better to have a shit tornado than to have no wind at all, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I envisioned that, and it's not great. So.
No, it was not. I mean, it's not necessarily one that I would say is appetizing, but I feel like I attempted to make sense. I'm hoping I did. Only time will tell. I'll probably want to cut my own head off after watching this, but what are you gonna do?
No.
Oh no, it's normal. I mean, like, I'm always thinking about cutting my own head off before lunch every day. It's just sort of a thing to do. So, but thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today. It's been great.
I had such a great time.
That was an inspirational interview. And for our Patreon members, you can watch me and Kelley have, in her words, a kiki. We even discuss edgelording. And alongside kiki, I learned 2 new words that I know will up my coolness factor for a couple of notches. So be sure to check out our Patreon to hear all the goodies, as well as reap rewards and help the channel bring you stuff like you're watching or listening to right now. But for now, I'm off. I'm going to go edgelord some guys online until I pass out. Or the sun rises. Whichever comes first. I feel cooler already.
Bye-bye.